Hey guys, my name is Carl Clark and I'm here to show you some basics about how to use Google Sheets. In order to do that, make sure you're logged into your Google account. You can use this waffle here, or you could simply type www.drive.google.com. When you do that, you'll arrive at your drive. In order to access Google Sheets, you would select New. And in this case it happens to be right here as one of the first, but it may be located in this area. But I'm going to show you first of all that you can use templates or start with a blank spreadsheet. I generally use a blank spreadsheet, but there are many templates that you might find useful, so I recommend that you explore that. Alright, so here I have a demo sheet. I inserted some just random numbers in here to show you some of the things that you can do with Google Sheets. So Google Sheets is essentially an Excel spreadsheet where you could, analyze data and do many other sophisticated things, but I'm going to show you some basics that I use as a teacher in general. One of the important things is how to insert data. So you just add these numbers into these cells here. And then what's amazing about Excel, or in this case Google Sheets, is the formula function. So this right here is something you might want to explore. The ones right here at the top are typically the ones that I use, but man, there are so many other functions that Excel can do that are extremely sophisticated and really useful. But typically I'm using some of these basic formulas here, particularly average. So what you can see here is I put these numbers in here and I just typed in equal average, and then I put that parenthesis there and I selected the numbers that I wanted it to average and then closed it. So that's probably the formula that I use the most. I did the same thing here. But if you need Google Sheets to do other functions, this is where you can find it. But generally I use averages. The next thing I want to show you is how you actually could create some amazing graphs with it. So here I'm selecting what I wanted to actually graph, and I select insert, and I'm going to put a chart. And this is a function of Google Sheets that is extremely useful. So here it already generated a chart for me, but man, there's so many features in here that you really need to play with. So you could, make it a line graph, different types of line graphs, column graphs, pie charts, other sophisticated graphs are available to you. It really depends on what you're trying to do. In this case, I would say a bar graph is most appropriate. And there's all sorts of ways that you could customize it, which I generally do because I want it to appear different. I absolutely want to label and title it. I want, the colors to be a certain way. I want it to include a legend or not. These are all features that really are, it depends on what you're trying to accomplish in your own personal style, but this is, something that I think if you're interested in using Google Sheets, I wanted you to be aware that you can use these functions to do some of the math for you automatically, and then how to select the data that you want to graph and insert a graph. And then from there, I'm going to have you guys explore the different details on how you want to express that chart. So let me show you what some of this looks like in action. Here's a particular activity I did with my class. So what we were doing is we're actually groups of students are adding data in here in a live document, so the students actually had access to this and they're plugging in their data. And what's amazing is by inserting the graph, and in this case I needed a line graph because that was just the nature of the data, the graphs are updating as you type in the numbers and students see that. So for me that's pretty powerful because it shows students how the numbers are actually generating the graph, which it's amazing how that really helps kids understand these things. So I think I can demonstrate that. Like, let's just say I take some of these numbers out here, it alters the graph. In this case it just omitted it because I just selected a random area, but if kids are, here, I'll take out like some of the end, you'll see that as kids are entering data, it's creating the graph as we go. So kids just love that, man. They're typing in their data from their groups and they're seeing the graphs change, and it's a pretty powerful tool to use for data analysis with students. So that's just this is probably how I use Google Sheets for the most part with students. I will share it with them. So this is another detail that I wanted to share with you. So you can see here I shared it with some of my classes and teachers. But what you really need to get savvy with as far as sharing, because that's one of the most powerful features of Google Suite applications, is being able to learn how to do this. So in this case, only people in Horry County schools have access to this. They can only view it, but I can change that. I can let them be editors. Sometimes you might want students to be editors or colleagues. That's an option, but generally you might want them to just be able to see it. But you could also, have anybody with the link have this. So there are many times where I want anybody to be able to access something like this. And if I did change it to anybody with the link, I can make them just view it, or I can allow them to actually edit it, and that totally depends on what you're trying to accomplish. Like if you're collaborating, you want them to be editors, but if you just want them to be able to see it, you make them a viewer. These are all really important features, and then once you decide who sees it and how they see it, you just copy the link and send it along. So I paste that link in an email, or I put the link into Google Classroom for students, but that's typically how you share these documents. And once you get really savvy on how to, how people access these documents, then you'll get really good at collaborating and actually making these things for students. All right, so and then I'll just show you one that was shared with me. So you could see here, I'm only able to view this. I'm not able to edit this, but these are the kinds of Google Sheets that you might come across as a teacher. But I wanted to show you how I'm not able to edit this document at all. So if I was going to go back to mine and I wanted to share this with a student, I could make them where they're only allowed to view it. And that is useful sometimes. I mean, there are times where you want people to edit it, but there's times where you don't. And that's where, if you get really good at how to use this share feature, it's really going to help you collaborate and share these resources with your students. So those are really the basics of Google Sheets. There are a lot more things you could do with Google Sheets, but for me as an experienced teacher, these are the things that I typically do with Google Sheets. I'm generally getting Google Sheets to have information, but there are clever things that you could do with Google Sheets. And also showing students how to use Google Sheets, particularly in science, is super useful because they can make these graphs and they really learn a lot. So I hope this basic tutorial of Google Sheets was somewhat helpful, and it was my pleasure.